what this world needs is not as much, it's not so much more information where health and wellness is concerned, but really a philosophy that embraces the medical, the nutritional, the psychological, the emotional, the social, the physical, the spiritual, and brings all these together in a way that the average person can grasp, and the average person can put into application in his or her daily life. That is really what it's all about. The answers to the health crisis, the answers to many of the problems that we are facing today are not all that difficult, but it takes probably a shift in your thinking, a shift in your understanding from what you've always been used to something a little different. And that is really our goal with these webinars, to help people find those answers and take more intelligent steps towards achieving their goals of health and wellness and, of course, longevity. And we have been very, very, very blessed to have, again, people like Dr. Lundell on these webinars to help us to achieve that goal. And right in front of you, you can see this is his book. He's going to be mentioning that in his presentation, The Cure for Heart Disease. Wow, is there such a thing? Well, yes, indeed. And we'll be learning more and more about this. So before I hand over to Dr. Lundell, I'm just going to read a few aspects of his bio, which is extensive. His resume has a list long enough to choke a horse, I can tell you that right now, but I'm just going to pick out a few points for here and there. Dr. Lundell's experience in cardiovascular and thoracic surgery over the past 25 years includes having performed over 5,000 coronary bypass operations, a certification by the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Thoracic Surgery, and the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. Dr. Lundell was a pioneer in off-pump heart surgery, reducing surgical complications and recovery times. He is in the Beating Heart Hall of Fame and has been listed in Phoenix Magazine's top doctors for 10 years. He was one of the founding partners of the Lutheran Heart Hospital, which became the second largest hospital in the U.S., and it is now owned by Banner Health. And there are a few other things that he has also been a pioneer of. Dr. Lundell enjoys time with his children and grandchildren. I think last count there are about 13 grandkids, and he competes in triathlons. He is the 2008 Ironman Arizona champion, wow, in the 65 to 69 age group, and was 10th in the Ironman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. Dr. Lundell, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I think I've handed over the presentation controls to you.
All right. Thank you. I see my slide. Do I?
We don't see it yet. Maybe.
Okay. All right. How about now?
Yes, we see the
wonderful.
The mountains in the background. All right. So, over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Ajibade and everyone else. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience tonight. What you see in this picture is the University of Arizona Medical School in Tucson, Arizona, sitting there at the foot of the beautiful Santa Catalina Mountains. And a long time ago, I was a very lucky young man to be invited to be in the very first class of the University of Arizona Medical School. And it was a very, very special environment because there were only 32 students and there were at least that many faculty. And so that made it really a special environment to learn one-on-one with the professors with no filtering by the grad students or anyone else. We had a very close association with the professors, and it made a special learning environment. One of the things I learned there was that heart disease killed at least half of all Americans. And our understanding of heart disease at that time was that cholesterol, excess cholesterol in the blood, slowly built up inside of the blood vessel, much like corrosion or whatnot might build up in the plumbing of your house and gradually corrode and fill the pipes in your house. And unfortunately, at that time in 1968, 69, there was not very much we really could do for folks with a heart attack. We had a few medicines that are crude by today's standards, some nitroglycerin and some digitalis and some, once again, some water pills or diuretics that are crude by today's standards, but not much else we could do. Well, while I was in school, a new operation came along called a coronary bypass. In this operation, we would take a vein from the leg or a artery from the inside of the chest here and detour around the blockage, and that's why it was called a coronary bypass, because we would actually bypass the blockage. Now this was pretty exciting to a young medical student because we could take someone who was disabled or someone near death or having trouble doing anything and really restore them back to their family, back to their work, back to their life and pleasure. And so I said, that's for me, I got to do this. So I finished general surgery training at the University of Arizona and went off to Yale University to learn how to be a heart surgeon so I could cure heart disease. And I finished that 2 years of training at Yale, and I came back to Arizona and put my head down and went to work. And this is what we did every day, and sometimes several times a day. The patient's head is down here at the bottom of the screen, feet are at the top, and this is the saw going through the middle of the breastbone, and I'm sorry for those of you who just had dinner. But here's a real miracle, the beating human heart. We don't have to ask it to beat, it just keeps going, and it's really a miracle. This is your typical coronary bypass. On the heart-lung machine, this tube brings the blood back to the patient from the machine. There's a tube over here that's taking it to the heart-lung machine. This is the vein that I'm sewing on the front of this heart. You can see the heart is completely stopped. We've got it basically in hibernation. There's no blood in it. There's ice packed around it, and this has allowed us to do this operation. But the heart-lung machine was a wonderful device, but it has side effects, and so some of us felt that if we could do this same operation with the heart beating and not using the machine, it would be an advance, and indeed it was. This is what's called beating heart surgery. You can see the coronary arteries stabilized between these two little feet there, much like the feet on a sewing machine. At any rate, after working very hard for a very long time, 25 years and over 5,000 of these operations, I really felt that I had pretty much failed. And I felt that I'd failed because although we were doing pretty dramatic things, and although, yes, we were saving and changing and making some lives better, the number of people with heart disease continues to skyrocket. And although we've lowered the mortality rate for men at least with our big complicated operations and stents and angioplasties and whatnot, the number of people with heart disease continues to rise. And here are the scary numbers. Every minute somebody dies of a heart attack. Every half a minute somebody has a heart attack. And so just think about 10 airliners crashing in a single day with 250 people on each one. Would that make a headline? I dare say it would, and there were no headlines today about heart disease anywhere that I saw. Now, about 2 years ago, there were a lot of headlines when this man passed away suddenly in his office in New York City. This obviously is the famous newscaster, Mr. Tim Russert, and because he was so famous, his death made the headlines, and it was tragic that he died at a relatively young age and in his office at work and couldn't be saved. Because he was famous, we happen to know, and his medical records, they were published. His LDL cholesterol, that so-called bad cholesterol that your doctor scares you about all the time, was 68. The number that your doctor is trying to get you to achieve is 130. Anything below 130 is considered good. So he was on medication for high cholesterol, and it was working because his cholesterol was 68, or his LDL cholesterol was 68. He had high blood pressure, and he was on medicine for that. He had an elevated blood sugar, but was not yet diabetic, and that's what we call prediabetes, and there's at least 70 million people in this country with that condition. He was mildly overweight, and the scary thing for us physicians, and maybe for everybody, is that in April, just 2 months before he passed away, he had a normal stress test, and that's where we run or walk on the treadmill and they watch the EKG, and I'm sure his doctor said, well, it's normal and you're okay, you keep taking your medicines and keep exercising and you'll be fine. Well, he wasn't fine, and he died with a normal cholesterol, and indeed, in a big study of 137,000 people who were admitted to U.S. hospitals in 2008, 75% had normal cholesterol levels. Let me repeat that. 75% of all patients admitted to the hospital with a heart attack have normal cholesterol levels. That really should tell us, or at least make us question, whether this theory of cholesterol slowly building up in the blood vessel is correct. Could it be that we were on the wrong thing? Could it be that this is not really what's happening? So what is happening? This is what happens. I'm sorry about the sound over there. What happens is that a plaque here, which was not big enough to obstruct the flow of blood, suddenly ruptures and blocks the flow of blood. And this is what happened to Mr. Russert. We know that from his autopsy. And this is what happens to a lot of those people that died today of heart disease. They had no symptoms until this plaque suddenly ruptured and caused their death. So sort of the real question is then, what causes this plaque to form? What causes it to grow? And what ultimately causes it to rupture? And the answer is inflammation. Now, the medical literature only began to talk about inflammation and heart disease in the late 1990s, with the biggest article coming out in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1999 with the headline, "Arteriosclerosis is an Inflammatory Disease." Now, this is a cover of Time magazine in 2004, bringing that information to the general public and making us aware that this thing that they call the silent killer was really inflammation and had a very strong link to heart attacks, some cancers, and a lot of degenerative neurologic diseases. Now, inflammation is a hugely complex subject, but let's try to make it as simple as we can. Let's suppose you're out in the garden and you get stuck with a splinter, and it brings into your body dirt and bacteria, and luckily we have this great thing called an immune system which recognizes the bacteria as abnormal and the dirt as abnormal and sends out a bunch of signals called cytokines. Now, these chemical signals, which control the inflammatory process, go into our circulation and they recruit the white blood cells, which are circulating in our blood vessel here. They recruit these cells and they tell them to pass through the wall of the blood vessel to come out here and fight this battle, which is here to be fought. Now, the interesting thing is that the bacteria actually, what they do to kill the white cells, what they do to kill the bacteria is actually eat it. And the macrophage becomes what's called a phagocyte and actually eats and dissolves that bacteria. That's the acute inflammatory process. We all know the cardinal signs of inflammation, and they're heat, redness, warmth, swelling, and pain. And we've all had this kind of wound, and if we didn't have acute inflammation, we would basically die every time we got hurt, every time we got an infection of any kind, we would die. But fortunately, we have this great thing called the immune system and the inflammatory system, which defends us against all these kind of invaders. And Once again, the whole thing is orchestrated and controlled by these chemicals called cytokines. Now, everybody in the audience has been sick at one time or another. And the question is, why do we feel so bad when we get sick? Like this this painting of a sick person. How does your brain know that your lung has an infection? Well, basically it's these cytokines that circulate around and signal everything that goes on to marshal this response. And they signal our brain to behave differently because we need to conserve energy to fight off the infection. And if we're an animal, for example, we need to hide so we don't get eaten by the nearest predator that comes along. And so inflammation actually controls not only some physical things, but it controls behavioral things. And this experiment has actually been done by giving some cytokines to volunteers and watching their behavior change. So the important thing is that the whole process, physical and mental, is controlled by these chemical signals. Now, the question is, what in the world's all that nonsense got to do with heart disease? Well, it's got a lot to do with it. Now, here's a picture of a cross-sectional picture of our blood vessel. And this is the wall of the vessel, this is the channel. And these white blood cells, our foot soldiers, if you will, are cruising around here waiting for a command. Well, if cytokines are present, then the lining of the blood vessel gets sticky or Velcro and attracts these white cells, which then migrate through the wall of the blood vessel. And under the influence of the cytokines, they become activated. They become the special forces, if you will, having been converted to that from the foot soldier. And if they see something that's not normal, they will eat it. Well, let's suppose we have LDL, low-density lipoprotein, or the so-called bad cholesterol, circulating around here. Now, it goes in and out of tissues all the time. That's its job, is to deliver cholesterol to cells all over our body. So the only reason this white blood cell would eat it, as depicted here, is if it's abnormal in some way. And the two ways it becomes abnormal are if we have oxidation of that LDL, or if it's glycated, that is, if it has a sugar molecule attached to it. And we know that LDL gets oxidized because we actually can measure antibodies against oxidized LDL. And that proves that the inflammatory immune system has recognized it as abnormal and has set up a system so these white cells know it's abnormal and know to do something about it. Now, these macrophages can't exactly dissolve all of this, and so they become what's called a foam cell, as you see here. And a collection of these foam cells then become what's called a fatty streak. A fatty streak is the very beginning of heart disease. Now, the scary thing is that in an autopsy study of 20-year-olds, 100% of them had a fatty streak, either in their right coronary or in their aorta. So we know that this disease starts in the young, and that means we all have a little bit of it somewhere or another. So the real question then is, what is this inflammation? Since I've already told you that we absolutely need acute inflammation, how can it then turn bad? Well, the answer is that acute inflammation is the response to an acute injury. And chronic inflammation, or silent inflammation, is the response to a chronic injury. That is, a small injury that happens repeatedly many times a day, and our immune system never gets a chance, and our inflammatory system never gets a chance to progress this on to healing. Just think if you had a sunburn and every day, twice a day, you took a piece of sandpaper and scrubbed it down hard. It would be a mess pretty soon and never get well. Well, there are many things in our environment that can hurt us, and the next series is about toxins and their connection to cancer. And so there are literally thousands and thousands of harmful chemicals and toxins in our environment. But in my opinion, the four most important and the four things that we can gain easy control of are these. We get injured every day by the overconsumption of simple carbohydrates, by the overconsumption of vegetable oils, by not enough fish oil, and by oxidative stress. Well, let's take first simple carbohydrates or sugar. 100 years ago, the average American ate less than 10 pounds per person per year. We now average 170 pounds per person per year of sugar intake. Just think that that's almost a half a pound a day. And we got there because starting in the 70s, we were advised to have a low-fat diet. A low-fat diet means a high-carbohydrate diet. And that's where we get all the sugar and all the excess carbohydrates in our diet, because we're following the recommendations made to us. Now, if you don't think high blood sugar is harmful, just consider what happens to a poor person who has diabetes. If they're not super well controlled over the long term, what happens? They lose their kidneys, they lose their eyes, they lose their limbs, and they die prematurely of heart disease. Now, I was in Dr. David's house last night and took a picture of his pantry, and here it is. No, not really, but it's just to demonstrate how it's everywhere. Everywhere you go, every market you go to, every convenience market, every gas station is just absolutely full of this stuff which to tempt us. Now,
everything except the Oreos.
Who out there would let their child sit down and eat 9 teaspoons of sugar out of the sugar bowl? Not many, but yet that's exactly how many teaspoons of sugar are in a sugar soda pop. 9 teaspoons. And we've all let our children have a soda pop. It's just a huge overload. And as I mentioned, we got here partially because of the recommendation that we have a low-fat diet, which means high carbohydrate. And we're also told that we shouldn't have any cholesterol, that was the cause of heart disease, and that we shouldn't have any animal fats, and we should have only what's the so-called healthy polyunsaturated fats, such as vegetable oils. And that led to the development of all the vegetable oils, the hydrogenated ones, which are solid, and the partially hydrogenated ones, which are liquid. A little bit of vegetable oil is okay, but large quantities of it, like we get now, were never part of the human diet until the 80s. And it's estimated that some of our teenagers might get 20% of their calories from vegetable oil because of the fast food and the French fries, and the fact that everything is cooked in it now. Because it's inexpensive and because of the hydrogenation, things don't spoil. Now, how important is vegetable oil? It contains omega-6 free fatty acids. And if we'll take a look at Greenland, where the measured tissue levels of omega-6 are 30, and look at the death rate over here per 100,000, it's not very much. And if we come to America, where we slightly more than double the rate, the amount of omega-6 in our tissue, we have 10 times the heart attack rate that we do in Greenland. And it's due to the fact that the omega-6 cause low-grade inflammation, which causes the other responses that we talked about. And inflammation is the real cause of heart disease, as we discussed earlier. It's about balance. Historically, we were 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6, but now because of our packaged foods and because of our prepared foods, we get about 20-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, and it leads to chronic inflammation, which leads to heart disease and many other disorders. And I mentioned deficiency in fish oil. Their measurements estimate that 80% of us in the United States are deficient in fish oil because we just don't eat a lot of fish and don't take a lot of fish oil supplements. It turns out that as pro-inflammatory as omega-6 is, omega-3 is an even more powerful anti-inflammatory. It works in many pathways, unlike a drug which targets one specific spot. Omega-3 works in many different ways to slow down and reduce and control the inflammatory response of chronic inflammation. In big studies around the country and around the world, for that matter, it reduces the risk of sudden death by at least 50%. It reduces heart disease by about 40%. Been shown to stabilize that plaque so it doesn't tend to rupture. So omega-3 is really one of our safest and most effective anti-inflammatory medicines. And omega-3 doesn't just benefit the heart. It's good for high blood pressure, irregular heartbeats, brain development of our infants, brain health of adults. It's very important there. Been enjoying increasing use in the treatment and prevention of depression. If we treat people with arthritis with significant doses of omega-3, their need for pain medicine goes way down, and diabetics improve if they get enough omega-3. And we talked about oxidative stress. Well, once again, it's about balance. It's about balance, and that means that we have enough antioxidants to neutralize all the free radicals we make. Well, the sad fact is that we make lots of free radicals as a consequence of the fact that we use oxygen to make energy in every cell in our body in these little things called mitochondria. As we strip off those electrons, we create oxygen-free radicals whenever we exercise, whenever we eat, whenever we breathe. Basically, whenever we live, we make lots of free radicals. Now, what's a free radical? Free radical basically is an atom that's missing one of these paired electrons. And I know everybody remembers their chemistry classes. And so that's an antioxidant. And what happens is it then becomes a thief. And it goes out and steals an electron from its neighbor, thereby making its neighbor unstable and a free radical. And this is how we end up damaging tissues, damaging DNA, is because this chain reaction goes on if we don't have enough antioxidants which are capable of donating an electron without becoming unstable. So an antioxidant can donate electron without becoming unstable, and a free radical goes out and steals them, making its neighbor, if it's not an antioxidant, unstable as well. And where do we get antioxidants? Well, fortunately we make them in our cell, but to do so we have to get all the building blocks from outside to produce these antioxidants. And we get them from vitamins, minerals, from protein, and we have to get all the building blocks, and sometimes we get just the antioxidants directly, and we need them all, and our body sorts out what we need. Not only do we naturally make free radicals, but if our environment gives us lots of other sources of free radicals. Sunlight, radiation, inflammation actually causes it, dirty air, cigarette smoking, all those sorts of things make it difficult for us to control this because, once again, this represents our bad environment with bad food, with no activity, and excess food, really. And here's the worst dietary advice given to humans in the last 100 years, the USDA food pyramid. Well, inflammation not only causes heart disease, but it also causes strokes, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's disease, depression, arthritis, and if you have any of those conditions and go to the doctor, you get a prescription. And I suppose both Dr. David and I have been guilty of this at some point in our careers. But we're both trying to change. The real question now becomes, have you got silent inflammation? And if you can answer yes to two of these questions, it's likely that you do. Are we significantly overweight? In men, do we have a waist that's bigger than 40 inches in diameter? Are we already on medicines for high blood pressure or high cholesterol? Can we not make it through the day without another Krispy Kreme or bagel? Are we more tired than we think we ought to be? Poor dental hygiene has been characterized as causing heart disease, and we now know the connection is that low-grade inflammation of those inflamed teeth and gums. Do we have more aches and pains than we think would be normal? And there is one blood test that we can get that reflects the level of chronic inflammation in our body, and that's called a C-reactive protein, or CRP. So as you can see, there are a whole lot of us who answer yes to 2 of these questions, and so there are a lot of us have some chronic inflammation, which is going to cause us disease and disability. Now, how can I control it? Basically, inflammation means fire inside, inflammation. And so if there's a fire, we call out our fire extinguishers, as I like to call them. And I mentioned the best fire extinguisher is omega-3. And if you look at a omega-3 supplement, you have to be very careful. A lot of marketing has gone on, and marketers sometimes don't always tell the whole truth. So you need to look for EPA and DHA, which are the 2 critical components of fish oil, and the 2 most effective ones. Now, flaxseed oil is nice smelling and nice tasting stuff, but it has ALA, which only a small amount is converted to EPA and DHA, which are the 2 components that really are the most powerful anti-inflammatory elements. And as we mentioned, we need antioxidant vitamins, and the building blocks both come from protein and from plant polyphenols. And the interesting thing is, a little bit of exercise goes a long way to reducing inflammation. Now, we've always said exercise is good for us, but we didn't know why until recently. It's been demonstrated that when we contract our skeletal muscles, they actually end up producing anti-inflammatory cytokines. So exercise not only builds strength and preserves muscle, but it actually produces anti-inflammatory compounds that helps cool down these fires of chronic inflammation. Now, next on the list is weight control. Now, why is that? The answer is that when our fat cells get overloaded, they begin to be huge chemical factories pouring out lots of these pro-inflammatory cytokines. And this is one of the reasons that people that are significantly overweight have lots of inflammatory diseases and some cancers that are more common in them than others. And it's a function of the chemicals and cytokines that get produced in the overloaded fat cells. And I mentioned the next thing we can do is to avoid the vegetable oils as much as possible. It's impossible to avoid them all, because all of our prepared food is made with them, but we don't need to use it at home, and we can try to choose things that are not deep fried or soaked in this oil. Now, we mentioned oxidative stress and antioxidants. This was a surprise to me when I discovered this, that the largest single source of antioxidants in the American diet is coffee. This measurement is in milligrams per day. So not only is coffee high in antioxidants, but we consume it every day. And so that's the reason that coffee is the largest single source of antioxidants in the American diet. In terms of actual content of foods and beverages, it's number 6 on the list. That's regular coffee is number 6 on the list of antioxidant content. And coffee contains these complicated plant polyphenols that help us make good, strong antioxidants. And these polyphenols not only directly fight those free radicals we talk about, but important to me, they prevent the oxidation of LDL, which, as we know, if it's not oxidized, it's never abnormal, and it'll never get consumed by the white cells and be part of that plaque mechanism that ends up hurting us or killing us. The coffee polyphenols are very interesting in that they have an influence on our glucose metabolism, and it's been shown that women who drink 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day have about a 50% less chance of getting type 2 diabetes. And recent evidence demonstrates that people who drink coffee habitually have less chance of Alzheimer's, have less chance of senility and other neurologic diseases. For a long time, coffee had a bad reputation as being not heart healthy because it had caffeine and it might raise our blood pressure. But these are old studies which have now been redone, and in fact, coffee actually ends up being healthy for us. When you talk about antioxidants, you have to ask, are they really absorbed? Are they metabolized? And do they do anything? Well, the coffee antioxidants, just compared to green tea, significantly block the oxidation of LDL and have, 5 to 8 times more antioxidants than even black tea or green tea. Now, that brings us back to this Asante Java. I was unaware until a few years ago of how important coffee was to our controlling oxidative stress. And then we discovered this coffee with the healthy roast process. Now, the green coffee bean is loaded with antioxidants. Unfortunately, when we roast coffee to make it taste good, we end up losing a significant part of the antioxidants out of that natural green coffee bean. Well, the scientists who developed the healthy roast process, which now Asante Java is uses, extracts antioxidants from green beans, and then as the beans come out of the roaster when they're still warm, this aqueous solution containing all the antioxidants is basically sprayed back on the beans, and so the antioxidant content is restored. And by doing that, it means that the Asante Java has 3 to 5 times the antioxidant power of any other coffee. Now, having said that, all coffee has antioxidant power, but this coffee is not only has 3 to 5 times more antioxidants, but it's also organic and farmer friendly. And as I mentioned, all these things benefit us with any coffee, but the Asante Java is the best. And all the information you've heard tonight is available in my book, which is available at Amazon.com. And with that, I will turn it back to Dr. David and open it up to questions. And I thank you very, very much for your attention tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Lundell. This has been probably one of the best explanations of the anatomy of a heart attack that I've ever seen or we've had on these webinars, and we have had quite a few people talk about how a heart attack or how heart disease starts, but none that has expressed it this way. I guess it takes a cardiothoracic surgeon who has actually seen it.
Well, yeah, I'm just a surgeon, so I'm not as smart as you medical doctors, so I had to simplify it.
I don't know about that. Okay, well, thank you again. Folks, you can type in your questions in the chat box to the at the top right of your screen. And Doc, I'm going to take this back from you for a quick second to show a couple of things. I'm sure we're going to need to display your slides again, but just if you just bear with me, make a few announcements here. Folks, Dr. Lundell spoke about coffee, and so obviously there are going to be questions about that. But if you're looking for a way to get the Asante Java, you can contact Marianne, and that's her number at the bottom. And that's her email, antioxjava@gmail.com. That's antioxjava@gmail.com. And I want to say this, folks. One of the ways we get great speakers and great presenters like Dr. Lundell is really people like you who have been on our webinars, who know about these experts and who do the footwork to help make it possible for them to be on these presentations. And so what we do is we refer all requests and queries back to the person who did the footwork. Obviously, Dr. Lundell is not going to answer all your questions. He's really, really busy doing a lot of other things. But Marianne can, and that's her information below. These webinars are also recorded. The free webinars are all, the live webinars are free, but the recordings There's a small fee attached to them, and you can just go to our website, and that's the website address is www.buildingstrengthwebinars.com. Our goal is to create a super center, a health wisdom center where you can find great presentations and great quality explanations like what you've just heard tonight on different aspects of health. And again, we're very, very fortunate to have people like Dr. Lundell to help us do that. All right, let's start. Let's go to the questions. Let me see. We probably should just leave this up for a little while. Okay, and here they are. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to first ask my question, Doc. Exercise. Now, someone had mentioned that some of the athletes, he worked with Olympic athletes. So actually someone on our webinar, Dr. Barry Sears, I don't know if you know about him, but he's like
yes.
Okay, the guru of information. And he says that athletes are some of the most unhealthy people because they are always chronically inflamed just because they exert themselves so much. And it seems to me like it's a double-edged weapon. Okay, everybody knows exercise is good for you, but you just mentioned, I'd never heard this before, but or anti-inflammatory cytokines. I didn't even know those things existed. I thought all cytokines were pro-inflammatory. But anti-inflammatory cytokines are produced by exercise. Is it specifically muscle contraction?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. That's we're now calling skeletal muscle an endocrine organ because of its production of anti-inflammatory cytokines, and these would be along the same lines as interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor and some of the others. They're slightly different when they come out of the muscle, and but they actually are. Now you think about exercise, you think about being sore. Well, if you exercise hard enough to cause these little muscle micro tears, well, yes, that certainly is inflammation, and we certainly can measure cytokines, and we certainly can measure an elevated C-reactive protein in that circumstance. And exercise will produce oxidative stress. There's no question about that. The interesting thing is that as we exercise more, our ability to make antioxidants increases dramatically, so that endurance athletes may not have really oxidative stress. And as we train more and more, and this is obviously only a few people are at the level of, for example, the bicycle riders at the Tour de France, which is going on right now. That's a different story than the rest of us. And yes, I do Ironman triathlons, but do you need to do that to get the benefits of exercise? Absolutely not. The big studies show that 30 minutes a day of almost anything that gets our heart rate up a little bit is what really lowers our risk of disease. And so, yes, Dr. Sears is correct. We can take it to extremes, but the extreme is 0, which most Americans do, and so a little bit of activity, as little as 30 minutes a day of anything, really dramatically changes your risk for disease, and will end up changing the way you feel.
Okay, thanks. All right, another question about coffee. Okay, well, toxins, that's taken care of with Asante Java, and then decaf. I understand decaf is more toxic than regular coffee is. Does Asante Java have decaf coffee in it?
There is decaf coffee, and it's there are actually 3 ways to decaffeinate coffee. The most commonly used is by using a solvent, which extracts the caffeine. The better way that the 2 other methods do is just using water. It takes a little longer and it's more expensive, but that's the process that we use with Asante Java. So there's no chemicals and no solvents involved. And the other thing is it's organic, and so there's no pesticides using on the plants anywhere during any of the process.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, coffee. Yes, the antioxidants are there and the polyphenols, but the caffeine still raises heart rate, doesn't it? And there are also claims that it can burn out the adrenals if you take it too regularly. Other than the antioxidant potential, doesn't that still pose a threat to health. The caffeine raising heart rate and the adrenal glands, stimulating the adrenal.
Well, it's interesting. Those experiments were mostly done with people who were not used to taking coffee. That is, they would take a non-caffeine user and give them high doses.
Hmm.
In that circumstance, yes, it did raise the blood pressure. Yes, it did raise the heart rate a little bit. But people who habitually consume coffee do not have elevated blood pressure and do not have elevated heart rate. In fact, a recent study demonstrated that habitual coffee drinkers have less arrhythmias or irregular beats than other folks. And they certainly is,
Really?
that certainly is not a, yeah, really.
And this was not a study done by Starbucks or sponsored by Starbucks.
No, it wasn't a Java study. It's a regular coffee, and anything that we
I mean,
quote
I
here
meant
will be,
I meant Starbucks. Starbucks, the company.
oh, no, it wasn't done by Starbucks either.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is fascinating information. Fascinating.
Well, it is, and I was relatively, I'm not a long-term coffee drinker. I only started drinking it about 10 years ago and only became aware of its health benefits in the last few years. And the medical literature on the benefits of coffee is very extensive.
Hmm.
And the other thing that fascinated me was the fact that it actually delays the absorption of sugar in the intestinal wall.
Really?
So that means if you know glycemic index, it means that it would lower the glycemic index of any food.
Of a bagel, for instance.
Yes, it would lower the glycemic index of a bagel, lower the spike in the sugar that we would get from a bagel.
Wow. Wow. And this is coffee in general.
Coffee in general.
Wow.
And the ingredient in coffee that's most important in terms of the effect on glucose metabolism and the antioxidant potential is called chlorogenic acid. And this is the compound that has the effect on the intestine and on an enzyme system in the liver that metabolizes glucose as well.
I think it's also fascinating that it has such effects on the brain in protecting the brain as well. That's fascinating.
Well, it is, and I think that effect is a combination of both the stimulation we get from caffeine and the polyphenols. Now, the polyphenols are powerful antioxidants, but I don't think we know yet everything there is about how they work and how they benefit us. As you know, we can take populations that eat lots of fruits and vegetables and they're healthy, but if we try to isolate some ingredient out of those fruits and vegetables and give it to a population, that's been generally disappointing. So
Right.
it seems that Mother Nature knows best.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Okay, here's the big question. What's the limit to how much caffeine you can take, coffee you can take in a day? And still be
Well,
healthy?
the average cup has got, about 100 milligrams, and I don't think we ought to have more than 4 or 5 cups a day. Some of the studies out of Europe, people had 6 a day with no untoward effects and actually showed benefits up to that amount of consumption. So once again, it's what we're used to, and while it's not truly addictive, some people indeed do have symptoms when they withdraw from caffeine, like a headache or something. But it's not on the list of banned substances at the Tour de France, for example, or any athletic organization. Although it has been shown to enhance athletic performance in those kind of events, caffeine has.
Really?
But it's not illegal. It's not a controlled substance anywhere, any way, shape, or form.
Wow. Wow. Well, Doc, we certainly need you to come back whenever you have the time to go into more detail about this heart health and these principles that you've touched upon tonight. Someone says, great webinar. Wow, I am so impressed. So much really great info. I have too many questions to ask here. I have a friend who just went on Coumadin. He seems prone to blood clots. I told him to get on omega-3s. Again, thank you so much. So that's not a question. That's a comment. Okay. This has been fascinating. Thank you, Dr. Lundell. Does coconut oil have any antioxidant effect in terms of omega-3s?
Coconut oil does not have omega-3,
Okay.
but coconut oil has had a bad reputation because there are components of it that are saturated fat. And the fact is that coconut oil is really very, very healthy, more healthy than the vegetable oils that we've been advised to use. And so I would suggest switching out the soybean oil for coconut oil for cooking and salads and all those kind of things, because it's way healthier. And while we're on the subject of saturated fat, there have been published recently several studies and recently a meta-analysis demonstrating there is no, I repeat, no association between saturated fat and heart disease.
What?
I know that would make your eyes go sideways. There is no association between saturated fat and heart disease.
Where can we find this information?
I'll have to send you the reference, but it's a relatively recent meta-analysis of a whole bunch of other studies covering over 300,000 patients.
Oh, wow.
Now here's the deal. Going way back, it was the only reason that saturated fat is associated with heart disease is because some specific saturated fats elevate cholesterol. And we've just shown tonight that cholesterol is relatively unimportant as to heart disease. So that makes saturated fat relatively unimportant to heart disease.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And I'm sure some of your colleagues are going to be unhappy with me for saying that.
Well, they already are. Too late for that. But so the key, as always, is inflammation. Is that what this all comes down to?
Yes, the key is inflammation, and as we've demonstrated or tried to demonstrate here tonight, without inflammation, no level of cholesterol would get in our blood vessel walls, and so indeed cholesterol is associated with heart disease, and indeed cholesterol is a marker that we can measure, and it's a marker for a diet that's too high in carbohydrates. The quickest way to lower cholesterol is not by eating Cheerios, which the TV says, but it's by reducing our consumption of simple carbohydrates, and the cholesterol would drop like a rock. The LDL will go down, the HDL will go up.
Mm. Mm.
So we'll come back for another argument about fat and cholesterol, all right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, in the same vein, what type of oils are the best to use? Now you mentioned coconut. What else?
Any of the nut, well, almost all of the nut oils. I would say we know that avocado oil is good, and walnut oils are good. They contain lots of antioxidants and are healthy. So I would say you can also go back to what Grandma did, and Grandma kept a cup of bacon grease on the side and used that for cooking, or lard. Plain old animal lard is way better for us than the soybean oil.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So soybean used to be one of the best things for you to put in your body. That is now not true?
That is absolutely not true.
Yikes.
I know you grow soybeans back there in Minnesota, but I'm sorry.
Oh, boy. Okay. Those of us who are not coffee drinkers. And by the way, Doc, you mentioned the other, I know we had spoken about a few of the other things that you have developed in your company that can help heart health, but you just spoke about them in generalities. You didn't mention your specific technology that helps to combine, or that has combined the fatty acids with the great nutritional factors. Did you ever want to talk about that, or you just want to stick with coffee?
No, I can talk about our other products. Really, as I decided to take a different approach to heart disease, I mentioned in a presentation I considered it a failure that I hadn't cured anybody. Yes, I had treated lots of people. Yes, we'd made people better. Yes, we'd alleviated symptoms, but we really never cured anybody. And modern medicine is really very good at intervening at the end stage of diseases with dramatic therapies, and thank goodness we have those therapies for sure. But medicine really, there's no incentive anywhere economically for prevention. And so medicine didn't want to change, and so I had to do something different. So I wrote the book, and I needed a vehicle and a platform to try to get this information out and make it simple for people to get the right nutritional products. And so we created a company called Asante, which the first product we developed was a combination of all those fire extinguishers we talked about, the omega-3 and the CLA and the antioxidant vitamins and minerals, and critically important vitamin D. We put that together in not a big handful of pills, which would typically take, but in a powder that can be mixed with a consumer's favorite liquid and consumed only once a day, and that would give every person their adequate amount of omega-3 and other anti-inflammatory and antioxidant components. And so that's been our first and really most important product. But when I discovered the benefits of coffee and the benefits of the healthy roast process, which made the Asante Java better, I embraced that too, because it's right on the theme that we have of building better health by controlling inflammation and oxidation.
Well, we certainly commend you in making such big decisions like that, and I know that they have not come at little cost. They have come at a great cost to you. So I know the people of this world really need more doctors like you.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question. My son is on a sodium-restricted diet. We are using olive oil to cook. Will that work well instead of nut oils?
Yes. Yeah, the olive oil is great. I wouldn't use it for frying because high temperatures hurt it. You should also try the coconut oil, but olive oil is great. Great monosaturated oil, which doesn't have any of the high content of omega-6 in it. So olive oil is great.
Okay, great. Someone says thank you. Shirley says thank you for putting health above money, Dr. Lundell. Many blessings to you.
Oh, thank you.
I second that. All right. Is it true that the dripping fat from bacon, which we used to save, has more toxins in it than before?
No, I wouldn't say so. We know that some oils, when they're very, very high temperatures, oxidize and degrade a little bit, but I'm not aware that saving your bacon grease would be toxic, but I'd be willing to, I'd be open to be educated on that. Yeah, but you can still buy lard for cooking at the store.
Right. Yeah, but isn't the fat isn't that where toxins are concentrated?
Yes,
bacon.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. For those of us who are not coffee drinkers, what would you recommend? Drink coffee. What else? Get those antioxidants for Pete's
sake. Get the antioxidants. Start having blueberries and blackberries and strawberries and artichokes and all kinds of colorful fruits and vegetables. And in fact, if you're not a coffee drinker, tea still is reasonable. It's not as strong as coffee, but it still has antioxidants in it. They're a little different variety, but they're still there.
Okay. Someone says, I noticed that my omega supplement also has omega-6 in it. Why? Is some safe?
Oh, well, I think there are some supplements that have 3, 6, and 9, and this and that and the other, but I wouldn't take that supplement because not because it's particularly evil, but because you already get too much omega-6 from other sources, and so I wouldn't add any more to my diet.
Right, right. Yeah, I've always wondered about that, why why they still put omega-6s. I mean, in spite of the overwhelming evidence that we have a lot of it in our diet. Doesn't seem to make much sense to me. What is considered elevated for the CRP? Anything other than 0?
It depends on the laboratory, but usually for men it's about 1.0, and for women like 1.5. But each laboratory will have a slightly different reference level.
Uh-huh. Thank you. All right. Someone wants to reduce it all to omega-3s. How much omega-3s does one need to take to keep us from getting, it's a medical question, getting diabetes? I don't think you can. You can.
Well, the recommendation, finally, even the American Heart Association recommends 500 milligrams a day of EPA and DHA. Whether you get those from having fatty fish or you get them from having a fish oil supplement, doesn't make much difference. But 500 milligrams a day is sort of the bare bones basic amount that we all should get.
Most people aren't even getting that, and even those that are, they are probably getting it from a not so good or not so good quality source, and so it's probably not even being absorbed.
Yeah, you want to get, well, first of all, the fish will have potential for more contaminants than the fish oil will, if it's a good refined fish oil. And if you get capsules from the health food store, just make sure that the more concentrated they are in terms of EPA and DHA, generally the less mercury or other toxins are in there. Now, for our heart shot, we actually measure all those things, and it's 0. And a whole lot of other fish oils will be 0, but generally speaking, the more concentrated it is, the less contamination there will be in it.
How can you tell how concentrated it is?
Well, you look on the, for example, if you go to the discount store and look on the front, it says 1,000 milligram capsules. You look on the back on the nutrition facts panel, and it will say either EPA X and DHA X or combined EPA DHA. So that's the number that we should look for. And the typical supplement at a discount store will be 1,000 on the front, but on the back it's only 180 combined EPA and DHA, and so you need to take 3 of those to get your daily requirement.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. That's very good to know. Doc, I know you have to leave soon, so I'm just going to try and curl out a few more questions, and let's see. Well, it looks like we've covered a lot of this. What is the best way to bring up vitamin D levels? How much do you need to take each day?
Oh, great question. I'm glad you asked. Best way is to go out in the sunshine. I know the dermatologists are going to go berserk when I say that. But sunshine, as long as you don't get burned, is the best way. Half hour of sunshine in Arizona will get me 20,000 units of vitamin D. Now, if you live in Minnesota where it's cloudy all winter, then you're just not getting almost any vitamin D from sunlight.
Right.
It's a great source, but we've been so frightened about sunshine, and we put on these sunscreens, which may or may not work, but they do block the ability of our skin to make vitamin D in response to sunlight. And the recommendation, the minimum daily requirements, or RDI, recommended daily intake, is very low, and I recommend that we get at least 2,000 to 5,000 units of vitamin D per day. If we get it by the sunlight, that's cool. If we don't, we live in a northern climate, and particularly in the winter, we absolutely need to be taking vitamin D. and I would say 2 to 5,000 units a day. And then there basically is no toxicity to vitamin D, because if you're out in the sunshine for several hours, you might make 50,000 units.
Mm. Mm. We had an endocrinologist talk about how he routinely gave 50,000 international units at a go, and he has gone up to 100,000 at one point.
Yeah, I think we're just, and he may be more authoritative, but we're just getting a glimpse at how many things are associated with vitamin D deficiency. We typically thought of only rickets, soft bones.
Right.
But it's really not a vitamin, it's a hormone, and it affects a huge number of things, and we just need to get more than we normally do, because once again we can measure those levels, and I recommend that everybody who lives north of Arizona should have their levels measured. They might find they're low.
Well, they say like 80%, isn't it, or even more?
Yes, that's the number.
That is shocking. Okay, well, this has been great. Thank you again, Dr. Lundell. And yes, we will take you up on that offer to come back. We want you to come back as many times as you can possibly spare. So we really appreciate that.
Thank you so very, very much. And everybody, please call or get in touch with Mary Ann and get yourself a bag of this delicious healthy roast Asante Java coffee. And we thank her for arranging this. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and a pleasure to meet with Sherry, and to be here and participate with your listeners. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Call Mary Ann and get some coffee.
Absolutely, folks. Call Mary Ann and get some coffee. Get this thing going. And all the best in your project, Doc.
Oh, thank you.
All right, folks. This has been great. And be sure to join us tomorrow for the Cancer and Toxins webinar with Dr. Dolan. And she's going to do one on Tuesday and one on Thursday. These are all free, as we mentioned. And if you want to have copies of this, just let us know, and we can. There's a small fee attached to them. So have a great evening, and we shall see you next time, probably tomorrow. God bless. Bye.